Hi, this is Joe from Sensipath. Today I want to talk about the 5 common struggles that many HSPs, a highly sensitive person, experiences. When you hear the term HSP, I don't think you just want to know what it is. Rather, I think most people want to know things like, okay, so what kind of personality does being an HSP make me? Or how does it actually affect my daily life? And also things like, why do I think and behave the way I do? I'm also a strong HSP myself, and after witnessing many other HSPs, I've noticed a lot of shared patterns that cause everyday struggles. So today I want to share these things based on statistics, so I hope this video will be helpful. So please make use of it until the end. So number 1, getting nervous about people's mood just from sound. So HSPs have sharp senses and react strongly to even small stimuli. Because of this, a lot of HSPs end up reading into tiny sounds and assuming they reflect somebody's mood. For example, if you're eating with somebody and they set their fork down a little louder than usual, you might immediately think, are they in a bad mood? And it just doesn't stop there. After that, your mind starts thinking, why are they in a bad mood? Did something happen? Maybe it's because of what I said earlier. And you keep searching for reasons that don't actually exist. But the funny thing is, HSPs end up finding a reason that makes it feel like it's their fault. And before you know it, you're going into anxiety. So you can say this about in many other things too. Let's take work for example. Let's say your boss walks by and their footstep sounds heavier than usual. Then you unconsciously think they might be in a bad mood today. Or you think they might be panicking about something. And what happens is, because you're convinced your boss is in a bad mood, asking them about something or reporting to them about work becomes difficult. So HSPs that have a hard time with communication, thinking too much about the best timing, which causes delays, and they keep thinking about it until they get exhausted. So even when something can be reported first thing in the morning, HSPs keep trying to detect people's mood, then 2 to 3 hours passes by and they still are not able to speak what they need. So it's like they're always waiting for the perfect timing of the boss's mood getting better. But in that 2 to 3 hours, they're completely exhausted from thinking too much. And the thing is, when we're discussing this type of situation, people often say, well, isn't it actually the same for anybody? Wouldn't anybody feel this way in this situation? So for this, I can say 2 things. Number 1, HSPs tend to believe without realizing that their depth of sensing people is something everybody else has too. But in many cases, that's not actually the situation. And the second thing is, it's true that anybody will notice somebody's in a bad mood if they see obvious signals, like if they speak to you in an intense, intimidating way, or if they make loud, disruptive noises. So this is quite universal to everybody. However, in HSP's case, they really notice the tiny details or changes that most people would miss, and they sense people are in a bad mood much earlier. So by thinking this in a big versus small scale, it's easier to see how different an HSP trait is. And number 2 is, you get anxious when you see somebody who is angry. This is a very common struggle for HSPs. For example, let's say your boss is angry. In that moment, your boss is actually getting angry to your coworker, but you end up feeling like you are the one being called out, and this situation drains you. Let's say in a school environment, I think there are cases where the teacher gets angry or points out something strongly in front of the entire class. So even though the teacher is not angry at one specific student, HSPs feel like they are the ones getting in trouble. And if the teacher says to all students in a strong tone, something like, "Do you guys understand?" it feels like you are being told directly, and this can even affect HSP's personality later on in life. Also, another thing is that HSPs are quick to sense the atmosphere of their environment. So for example, in a group of people, when the vibe feels like everybody is thinking, God, I wish this conversation is over. So then what HSPs do is they start feeling a sense of justice and they raise their hands voluntarily and they speak up and try to end the discussion. So it's like they sacrifice themselves in the group. So even when somebody else is being the target, HSPs say something like, "It was partly my fault too," and they try to end the situation by making themselves also the bad person. It's a nice thing to do, but these overly responsible type of actions could collect unnecessary hardship for HSPs. And the sensing of someone's anger doesn't only happen at work, it also happens in public places. For example, in a coffee shop, if an HSP hears a couple arguing at the next table right beside them, or they hear a customer complaining harshly to a store clerk, then HSPs cannot feel any safety or warmth in that place. So they end up thinking, "I don't want to come to this place anymore." So by looking at these situations, you can see that HSPs are easily influenced by other people's emotions wherever they are. That's why it's important for them to choose environments and people with low stimulation, because that creates a sense of safety for HSPs. And number 3 is you feel frustrated when you're the only one with the heavy workload. This is something that happens at work. So HSPs are born with a sensitive temperament, and through their school, home environment, and the people they interact in life, their personality gets shaped. And for HSPs, because people are strong stimuli, they tend to hold back their opinions from childhood. So what happens is you start worrying a lot about other people's moods, and you become somebody who's finding it hard to say no. So as a result, you end up taking on too much workload at your job. But what HSPs really want is harmony, so to get along with everyone. So for example, if the HSP person is the only one busy, then they hope that somebody will say kind words like, "Do you need a hand?" or simply, "Is everything okay?" So HSPs are deep down hoping or expecting for people to be kind to them like this. But in reality, only few workplaces exist that are like this, because taking on too much workload is considered your own responsibility in most workplaces. And if you cannot handle extra work, the company's stance is usually you should have consulted and controlled your workload. So this kind of work culture is the opposite of kind cooperation. So HSPs start becoming frustrated because their expectation for a helping each other kindly type of environment is not happening. And the reason HSPs take on too much workload than necessary is because they have a hard time saying no. Also, HSPs tend to have this feeling of, "I don't want to be disliked by others," so they become people pleasers, trying to look good, and as a result they say yes to everything and accept work easily. But in reality, the people around HSPs are actually full of people who take advantage of them, and they use HSPs lightly in many cases. So even when HSPs are loaded with a lot of work, these bad people are only thinking, "Wow, how lucky, I get to work less," and these people have no guilt about it. So again, the whole stance is, well, too much workload is your own fault, and that's the end. But as an HSP, you end up thinking, "Why doesn't anybody understand me?" And this feeling turns into strong frustration. So there are many stories of HSPs who end up quitting their jobs because of these types of situations. And what often happens is that their bosses get surprised, because from the boss's point of view, it's like, "You always handled so much work so efficiently, and everybody had a good impression of you. Why do you hold it all in, and why do you want to suddenly quit?" So for this reason, many HSPs get asked by their bosses to stay at their jobs. But at that point, it's already too late, because the HSP person has already made the decision to quit. So they are already exhausted mentally and want to leave the job as soon as possible. So this is another quite common thing for HSPs. And number 4 is getting irritated when you see people with bad manners. So again, when we are talking about HSP traits, many HSPs tend to be conscientious, a bit stubborn at times, and have a strong sense of justice. And this is likely because of family environment HSPs grew up in. So from childhood, HSPs are sensitive to stimuli, so they try to avoid it because they feel afraid of it. And so when parents get angry, it's a strong stimuli for HSPs. When you're a child, if your parents abandon you, you cannot survive. So HSP children are always observing their parents carefully. And because of this, from the parents' point of view, HSPs become well-behaved kids. So this means they start playing the good child role. And so whenever their parents say, follow this rule, they always listen to what their parents say. And this is how manners and sense of justice becomes shaped in HSPs strongly. So when we talk about rules in society, it's clear that everybody must follow them. For example, you must not cross the street where there is no crosswalk, or you must stop when there is a red light. But in this world, there are people who don't follow these rules. And also, there are those unspoken or unclear rules that exist. So traffic rules are very clear. But for example, if you're in a lineup of people, the unspoken rule is you must line up in proper order and other people must not cut in front of others. But then comes the question, what about the people who are merging or joining in with somebody who has already been lining up? Is that breaking the rule? So this happens in places like food courts or theme parks. And for these things, there are no clear written rules, but people generally follow them. However, its definition is quite unclear. Seeing people cutting in front of lines makes HSPs feel irritated. In that moment, HSPs feel a sense of justice and they want to say something to these people, but because they are afraid of how they would react, they end up not saying anything. So they bottle up that feeling and that feeling becomes stress and they end up feeling exhausted. So for these kind of situations, a good tip is if those bad manners don't affect you directly, it's better not to pay attention to them. So of course, if a person cuts right in front of you, you might consider saying something. But let's say if you're just watching the news online about people cutting in front of others, this doesn't directly affect you. But by watching this, it still makes you feel irritated. So the idea is it's best to avoid watching these things and save your energy as much as you can. So by limiting information, you can also control your emotions. And lastly, number 5 is you go into negative self-reflection mode before sleep. So I think many people can relate to this. HSPs have a tendency to think more on the negative side, and before bed, many people go into negative self-reflection mode, thinking about every interaction of that day, and they end up criticizing themselves. For example, a coworker invited you to dinner, so you went with them. You didn't want to go, but you went anyway. And because your true feeling is that you didn't want to go, you start blaming yourself for not being able to say no. And the scary part is, even if you had said no and didn't go to dinner, then you would have still felt guilty about the fact that you said no to your coworker, and you would have still blamed yourself either way. So in the end, this self-reflection session always ends up being a session of blaming yourself. So this is quite scary, but it's very common for HSPs. So what I suggest in this situation is to always end the self-reflection thought with a positive ending. So simply put, this means you also find the positive side of your actions and be kind to yourself. So in this case, the dinner with the coworker, you might think like, yes, it's true, I was afraid of being disliked and I couldn't say no, but this also means I am good at caring about others' feelings and I did it from pure kindness. It's true I couldn't say no today, but the dinner itself was delicious, coworker was happy, so I don't have to blame myself overall. So by using this kind of thought process, it can make your negative feelings settle somewhat, and you can understand that you also had good parts and you can end the day with a positive feeling. Or another good thought process further is to think, the next time I get invited, I'll think of a valid reason in advance to refuse, so I feel less pressure when I say no. So thinking about how to use the experience for the next time in this kind of situation is also a positive element. And as these thought processes become a habit, you will slowly develop positive thinking. So it's good to consider adding a positive ending during your self-reflection before bed. So today I talked about the 5 common struggles that many HSPs experience. On this Sensipath channel, I share detailed information for HSPs, highly sensitive people. So if you like, please subscribe and make use of the content on this channel to make your life a bit easier to live. So that's it for today. This was Joe from Sensipath. Thanks for watching.